A little more light there. I see a few more faces than I did last time. But it's okay, I got my support crew in the front, so if I have a panic attack, then someone will jump on stage and grab me. Thank you all for coming back, and those that didn't make it last week, welcome. And Tim gave a nice intro, so I will just preface just very briefly that we'll spend a few moments doing a more traditional mindfulness so that we can change the brainwave pattern and the circuitry in the room. And then we'll go into a guided visualization, which you may or may not be familiar with. But if you've attended the Rubin before and you've seen the unbelievable legacy of the Tibetan imagery, then perhaps this might be a way to actually experience it. What is the imagery all about? How is it used? What's the psychology of it? But before we get into an analysis or an understanding of it, let's have an experience of it. So those of you that are quite uptight New Yorkers, you might have trouble with this. And let me preface by saying this. There is a difference between mindfulness and relaxation and the visualization. The visualization will be active. I'm going to ask you actually to try to return to the mind of a child and let go of a lot of your preconceptions and how things should be, and to really try to access that innate quality of playfulness, imagination, spontaneity, creativity, because that will really allow you to experience the visualization in a much more harmonious and fluid way, rather than sort of getting all bent out of shape about why is this happening and what about that, and I can't see anything. I'm having trouble visualizing the Buddha. So try not to be so uptight, even if it's your first time. Do find a comfortable posture. If it's helpful to close your eyes, go ahead and close your eyes. And just find your breath at the tips of your nostrils without controlling the breath. Just let the breath rise and fall naturally. And just focus your attention there. And try to do 10 cycles of breath with each cycle, including both an inhalation and an exhalation. And if you get distracted, just come back again and again. And really let go of everything that happened today, getting here. All the thoughts, worries, and doubts on your mind. Find the breath. Become the breath. Wherever you are in that process, then just imagine that we're altering the frequency in this space together. And we're harnessing or tapping the concentrative power of our attention. And then we can use that as leverage, for example, to contemplate a theme or to access the potency of an image. So let's first just contemplate the theme of just how powerful consciousness is to intervene in your life. That you could radically alter, course correct, and shape evolution with your consciousness, if you could master it. And the second contemplation then is then to add a little bit of a motivation to this whole experience, not just our meditation, but our time together. It's an unbelievable thing that 100 of us will get together and actually sit down quietly together and work with our consciousness. But what's the end game? So do kindly think about the state of affairs on this planet. And try to think that you want to be on the side of its development and assisting it in flourishing, bringing equity to all living beings on this planet, returning the ecological situation to balance and green, and being an agent of change. So for all those living beings that don't have the fortune to sit down and watch their minds, work with their minds, we do this practice for them. And with that now, just join me to let go of the mindfulness aspect, and we can begin to deconstruct and dissolve the world picture we have assumed to be so concretely out there. If you recall, the quantum analysis reveals that mostly there is energy and space, and out of which our projections create forms, shapes, experiences. So just imagine if we were to let go and return to the quantum strata. Imagine, if you would, almost like on an acid trip, just letting everything melt, psychedelically melt. The space, the city, the country, the planet, the solar system, into a vast, open field of energy, luminous. And just find yourself, even your body, dissolving. So that sense of solidity and that sense of fluidity and the sense of heat and the sense of wind or sense of space, all of the elements dissolve until you're just a point of consciousness in a vast sea of quantum energy. Breathe. And then knowing what we are going to create is but a visualization, but also knowing it is to activate our highest potential. Let's imagine emerging from that vast sea of quantum energy in a hologram body, like an Obi-Wan Kenobi body made of pure light. It looks like you, but it feels fluid and transparent. Spontaneously around you, then you find yourself on a beautiful island, surrounded by a shimmering crystal lake. And on all sides you see beautiful mountain peaks, snow-capped. And above that and beyond that, a beautiful, blameless, cloudless blue sky. And at its apex, the sun shining down on the entire valley and the shimmering lake. And at the center of that island is a beautiful, vast, strong tree. Beautiful branches extending in all directions. Firm and safe and secure and abundant. And do kindly, as you look up in the trees, begin to start to see shapes and colors that emerge from a kind of tapestry into forms of living beings, sitting up there cross-legged in the tree, looking down at you. And feel that their presence is just like a wave of love and like a beacon of hope. And then the images of their faces become clearer. They're all beautifully tranquil. They're smiling with beautiful, reassuring smiles. Their hearts are open. And you can begin to make out that these are the saints and sages of all wisdom traditions and perennial philosophy. All the living legacies of all contemplative practices of human evolution are manifested and represented in this huge tree, beaming and radiating, smiling. And at the center of the tree, do kindly imagine your kind mentor, whoever it is that inspires you, moves you, touches you, helps you believe in the possibility of humanity. There they are, right there at the center of the tree. Try to see them, feel them, taste and touch them, their tenderness, their compassion. Please do take a moment to see the details of their eyes, their smile, their presence. And feel that they're right there for you. They're so happy with you. They're so delighted to be connected to you. And just take a moment to take them in and really admire that beautiful way of being, that confidence, that presence, that radiance, that immanence. And it's fine to open your mind to the possibility of growing into being more like that. Believe. And as you believe in the possibility of your own evolution, then do kindly make a gesture. So see yourself, imagine yourself offering to your mentor, to your inspiration, whatever it is that you'd like to give away. So you can offer a sentimental object, you can offer flowers, you can offer your heart and your mind. And as you do see them receive that and feel that there's a chemistry and a flow and a resonance between you. And from that space of closeness and proximity, then, do kindly take a moment, each and every one of us, to really identify whatever ailment, limitation, block, transgression that we are repeating, that gets in our way, that limits us, that holds us back. And just psychically as we do, as we identify that hindrance, then the mentor also registers it psychically, understands it, holds it without any judgment, but also sees right through it, sees it just as a wrinkle in a sheet of cloth, just a temporary hindrance. Also then the mentor sees you at the end of your journey, a fully bona fide hero, a mentor being, an altruist, fully cultivated of positive qualities and completely eliminating all the negative qualities, transcendent. And go ahead and see if you can even begin to rejoice in that image of you seen from that vantage point. And do kindly take stock and really appreciate all the amazing activities that you're doing to contribute to your own evolution. And as you do that, think about all your brothers and sisters across the planet trying to evolve in a positive direction. And just try to balance the skewed Fox News perspective that it's all going to pot, that actually the planet is awakening and living beings are doing tremendous things and accessing enormous creativity and have such goodwill. And now recognizing that the journey of evolution is long, then you ask your mentor, whoever it might be, whoever moves you, ask them for guidance. Ask them to bless you. Ask them to lead you. Ask them to fulfill your wishes. And delighted to be asked, imagine them sending a beautiful rainbow light from their heart, like elixir rainbow light. It enters your crown, passes your throat, and dissolves inseparably with the inner essence at your heart. Feel that just like illuminating you like a lantern from within. This beautiful rainbow, splendid elixir light of wisdom and compassion. And imagine it driving away all the remaining cobwebs of evolution and of scarcity mentality and of limitation and doubt, so that you feel really buoyant and really, really uplifted and really inspired. Then imagine that together all the saints and sages that are up in the tree, your kind mentor, and you begin to offer this wave of solidarity, this optimism and this hope with all of life. And so refracting like a mirror from your own heart, that elixir rainbow light begins to emanate outwards, filling the vast valley, cresting over the mountain peaks, infiltrating all the cities and villages of all countries of the planet. And as it does, it touches the hearts and minds of all living beings. And as it touches their hearts and minds, it kindles within them the sense of hope and optimism that is their birthright, until the entire planet is enfolded in a jewel tree net of elixir, of rainbow wisdom and compassion. All living beings brought into this jewel tree enfoldment, this nexus, this net of interconnectivity. And just imagine for a moment with me from that point of view of everybody accessing the best in them, that every single problem on the planet can be solved. And that everybody working together with the right motivation and the right conditions could transform this planet into a paradise. I'd like you to see the planet green and peaceful, harmonious, egalitarian, free. All living beings. Breathe. On the next inhale, imagine that wave, that rainbow light of solidarity comes back through all the hearts and minds, ripples back through the cities and countries, back over the mountain peaks into the valley, comes back into your heart center where it coalesces as a beautiful rainbow teardrop. Breathe. Your connection with all of life is within you. Then we're going to ask the jewel tree mentor beings and the jewel tree itself to also dissolve. Happily, they dissolve into a single drop of rainbow light. That comes to your crown, slips past your crown, throat, and heart, and merges inseparably with your own heart essence, your own human kindness. So that now the entire world nexus or family and the enlightened beings and all the possibility that they represent, that vision of harmony and ecstasy, is now fermented and planted in the core of your very heart. Breathe. Feel it rotating there and spinning with every breath. I'd like for you now in your own personal way to make a prayer or dedication that's meaningful to you about manifesting that vision in whatever discipline, whatever industry, whatever relationship you find yourself. That your fundamental mission is to awaken the planet to its own true nature. Spontaneously then the entire jewel tree imagery, the tree itself, the island, the lake, the valleys, the blue sky dissolve back into quantum energy. The sea of quantum energy, which is our natural, most fundamental substrate then, like an ocean. Our hologram body melts into that ocean. And then instantaneously open your eyes, back in your ordinary body, back at Rubin Museum, back in your seat. All your memories, limits, doubts, fears, they all remerge, but just try to hold on to that little drop of elixir chemistry at your heart, the seed of possibility. Thank you so much. So I have maybe 45 minutes to lead you through probably the most sophisticated, unbelievable, unworldly science technology that has ever been used by human beings on the planet, in my estimation. And there's no way I'm going to ever do it disservice. But if you do come to the Tibet House, I usually teach at the Tibet House. If you do come to Rubin often, you have seen the tankas, like this one, which is a jewel tree refuge matrix. And you might pass by and wonder what's really going on there. This is a tool. This is a technology. This is a technology that is used and underpinned by a most radical psychology. A most radical psychology. The tantric psychology is far out. It's not for the faint-hearted. It's not for the faint-hearted. If you are trained, and most of you are, as a Western reductionistic scientific materialist, which we have been conditioned as our main paradigm, this will feel to you like a bunch of mumbo-jumbo. And my job is to introduce you to a way of entering into this material that is at least grounded in some of that scientific reductionism, so that we can at least use a common language to understand the very vibrancy of a tool and a technology like this. So before we do that, before I explain what a visualization is and how it works, the practice that we just did, this visualization, I have to at least put it in context for you vis-a-vis where we were last week. What we did last week is in 1 hour we condensed about 500 years of early Buddhist psychology. Early Buddhist psychology is dependent on what's called a dualistic paradigm, in which the spiritual aspirant tries to transcend reality, sees nirvana as an exit or escape from the world of samsara, compulsive life, driven by Piggy, if you remember. Not seeing reality clearly, having massive, massive distortion of perception, receives external data cues, fires certain memory banks, and elicits certain emotional reactivity that sends us on a wild goose chase of reactivity, thus perpetuating our own kind of sick, distorted nightmare merry-go-round of existence. That's a real pleasure, isn't it? Here we are. There's not a single one of you that doesn't understand or appreciate what I've just said, because in the privacy of our own rooms and lives and minds, we're all contorted in on ourselves. If I gave you a little sample of how anxious I am to get up here, you'd have insight into just like what it's like to get up in front of 100 people and think that you're going to be rejected, like you're a zebra on the plain going to be attacked by a saber-toothed tiger. Evolution has done a number on us, and brains are set up in such a way to presume the worst. But we're co-creating reality. We are taking little bits of data in and infusing, projecting, and manufacturing unknowingly a very distorted, troubling reality to which we react as if it's de facto a real reality. And the early Buddhist science is about empowering individuals to cut through that distortion, to eliminate that distortion, to cleanse the doors of distorted perception, so that reality can be apprehended clearly, and so that the emotional system can remain homeostatic or balanced, and so that we can then volitionally choose how to respond to the reality, knowing that we're engineers of future reality. So that's not a passive philosophy. The idea is with our thoughts, actions, we are creating our future experience. So this is about harnessing, taking full responsibility for the projections, reconfiguring the projections, and then creating an optimal reality. And the idea there was that we would escape a compulsive life and enter into a life of freedom. And that's how you get samsara, compulsive life, and nirvana, freedom. And for 500 years, many people that were taught this figured that would be an utter physical escape from the world of suffering. And the Buddha very intelligently and shrewdly did not answer questions about what happened when an enlightened person dies, what happens to them. Their body dies, but what happens to consciousness? He didn't answer the question. And so a lot of the philosophy of the time felt that the world is about transcendence. It's about departure. It's about exiting. Around the time of the turn of the millennium, you have the rise of what's called Non-Dualism Advaita. And that's a radical paradigm shift in which enough human beings on the planet understood that really samsara, a life of compulsion, and nirvana, a life of freedom, were not two states of being, but rather a state of mind. That your distorted mind could be projecting an erroneous, difficult life circumstance, or your state of mind could equally reconfigure itself to experience freedom, but you would never have to leave this. This is all we have, folks. Actually, for us in the Western Hemisphere, this ain't too bad. Can you imagine if you were in Syria right now? Oh, let's not talk about Syria. No, we don't. We want to go on eating our steaks and driving our Hummers and paying taxes to wars. We don't want to get into uncomfortable discussion. But That's an option for us, to really, really take responsibility that we actually have it really good and we are in a position actually to make a huge impact on the planet if we have the courage to make a different choice. That's within our power. And that millennial shift of non-dualism, what it does is it concentrates an enormous amount of power and energy and responsibility into living beings, spiritual aspirants, to change the very matrix and context in which they inhabit. They co-share. So whereas in the first 500 years, even in the yoga traditions, the Hindu traditions that preceded Buddhism, the archetype of the movement of liberation is a single figure archetype who's escaping reality, known as a saint or sadhaka or a jiva mukta. When you get into non-dualism and you understand that everything is a state of mind, that everything is actually empty, it's a projection of mind, you could access beautiful intentions and aspirations and reconfigure the place that you actually live and marshal tremendous qualities to actually have. It's fluid. This whole thing is fluid. Even just this looks real, right? This looks real, right? We know from last week it's quantum. It's quantum. Our interactions are quantum. We are quantum, which means that we could reconfigure it. We could have a completely different experience. We could spend time barking at each other, or we could end up spending time together empowering each other to make a difference for everybody else. That's a choice. That's a choice based on the principle of non-dualism. So 500 years after the Buddha, you have these deep, deep teachings on emptiness. And maybe there will be a program coming here at Rubin about wisdom, which I hope they at least point to what wisdom means in the Buddhist tradition in this Mahayana, universal vehicle philosophy that emerges 500 years after the Buddha, where it really means non-dualism. Everything is about a state of mind, that we don't ever leave each other. And that if we know we never leave each other, then what's the best way to be with each other is the next question. So you have this beautiful statement from Nagarjuna, Shunyata Karuna Garbham. Shunyata Karuna Garbham means emptiness. Quantum reality is the womb of compassion. If we all understood our fundamental natures and we felt responsible, confidence, if we felt confidence that we could do something, wouldn't it be easier to do something? And then the question is, what would we do? What's the best motivating factor of a living being that understands the quantum field of reality and understands their agency? Is to act with compassion. Because how good is it to eat your little Twinkie in the corner when everybody else doesn't have none? How good is that? It sucks. It sucks being privileged, knowing that there's enough abundance on this planet, there's enough water, there's enough food, there's enough goodwill to go around so that we could actually civilize ourselves in a respectful, healthy way. And so how can we sit here in our little, bunker? Well, people are actually, right now, people are dying so many places, unnecessarily. And what it requires is probably half of us will be like, yeah, I kind of know that, but what am I really going to do? I've just got to make my money and pay my bills, brother. I just got to pay my bills. But there is a small segment of people that realize they have enough and have an inkling that they could do something about it and want to do something about it. And then the question is, what do I do? The way to intervene in the matrix, the quantum field of reality, is through harnessing goodwill, compassion, and skill, the art of creativity, the art of solving problems, the art of engagement, the art of dialogue, the art of negotiation, the art of building new institutions like banking systems that work for everybody. Do you understand? New social systems that work for everybody. Don't we want that? Who's going to do it? Is it Obama's going to do it? Hillary's going to do it? Trump's not going to do it, we know that. It's some dude or lady in here that's going to do that. That's going to come together, understand things are empty in a creative way. Understand that things can be transformed. And have enough intelligence and know-how to infiltrate the system in order to radicalize it and make it more harmonious, more fair. That's what it's going to take. It takes an army of what's called Bodhisattvas. Bodhisattvas are the Mahayana version of the spiritual aspirant, the saint, who's going for his own or her own enlightenment in the early tradition. In the new tradition that's based on non-dualism, the aspirant becomes the bodhisattva, the agent of altruism, the altruistic warrior, if you will. People that want to transform the planet, they have enough. They've had their Twinkie. They're satiated, and they're now turning their eyes to all those living beings that are still under the delusions and fixations of their traumatic narrative and their own projections, thinking that they are real. Do you follow? It's like, wakey, wakey, everybody. It's a terrible nightmare. That's what a bodhisattva does. Sometimes they come caress you, and sometimes they come with an effing hammer and wake you up. Because that's what it takes. Living beings need different wake-up calls. Some need soft velvet gloves and years of poking and prodding. And you think you're okay. Can you be an adult now? Can you be mature? Can you be confident that you can take care of other people? And then other people need a hammer. So the bodhisattva is someone who has a whole array of toolkit. So that's the context, right? You have early Buddhist psychology, which is sometimes called the Theravada tradition. Then you have the Mahayana tradition, the universal spirit of wisdom and compassion. And within that subset, the bodhisattva has two choices. The bodhisattva can take the slow path, like the, what kind of train would that be? That would be like the local train. And then the bodhisattva, a very small segment who are prepared and willing and impatient, radically impatient, they can take the express train. And the express train is called a Tantra. The express train is a little more dangerous. It requires a little bit more training, but it's hella fast. It'll get you there quicker. And what's there? Of course, there is not outside there. There is here. More here. More here in an awakened, enlightened way. More skillful in how we reconstruct and reconfigure this thing before it all just goes to pot, right? Ice caps melting and tanks rolling in and FEMA like getting ready for us and the cartels laughing as we get distracted by Hillary and Trump. The cartels, they have it so rigged. The banking cartels, they've got us all like watching our iPhones and watching football and eating pizza thinking it's all okay, we'll just vote for more of the same stuff where we're imprisoned. But really what's going to happen is there's going to be an unbelievable spiritual revolution on this planet where we don't take that anymore. We see right through it. And we're not going to pull Cheney and Bush and Rummy out and summarily execute them on the White House steps. We're going to take them to The Hague and try them for war crimes. And every banker that profited from the unbelievable, charade of the mortgaging crisis, we're going to get a group of lawyers to make sure they pay every cent back to us with principal. Interest. You see, that's how we're going to, it's going to take a bunch of really expert lawyers that can figure it out and play the game better. And then we're going to, instead of throwing them away and isolating them in psych wards and prisons and, siloed in 23-hour lockdowns, we're going to educate them about how to be sensitive. Because we never leave each other. So somehow we're going to have to re-educate Dick and Rummy and Bush. W, the Three Stooges. We're going to have to re-educate them because we can't get rid of them. Because we're in it together. This is the quantum matrix. So we have to actually sit down and civilize them and tell you, well, when you don't have much, you struggle. What is it going to feel like to struggle? They need to know what it's like to struggle. Let's give them a year or two of living on the welfare system as a re-education process. How about that? How many of you are willing to take on that? I can't do it. I'm a psychologist. I work with minds. But I'm looking for a few good lawyers and a few good economy people And a few good people that can architect a nice society, a social structure that works, driven by this incentive of understanding that the world is fluid and love prevails, interest, enthusiasm, and creativity. So back to the Tantras, how radical is it? You can see I could probably do this talk over 25 hours because it's so juicy. It's one of the most exciting, juicy things. But you have a context now that the Buddha taught certain teachings for 500 years, then the emergence of another kind of teaching based on non-dualism. And for those bodhisattva altruists, they have the slow train where they practice a development of wisdom and compassion. And then a very small fraction have the option of doing the express train, which is called a tantra. And what defines a tantra? Okay. One of the things that defines a tantra, as we use the analogy of an express train, is that it's incredibly quick. Well, what makes it quick? One of the things that why it's so quick, rather than a mindfulness meditation, right? You're all familiar with, because of McMindfulness movement in this country, you're all familiar with mindfulness. But you might not be familiar with the tantric approach, which for many, many years is very secret, and because it's so precious and could lead to a lot of distortion given the wrong context or wrong motivation. But one of the things that's so incredible about it is incredibly quick, fast. How? Well, it works not just on breathing and changing brainwave, for example, but you're having a virtual reality relationship. And so you are operating on deconditioning and reconditioning a relational pattern, a behavioral pattern, an emotional pattern, a perceptual or self-image pattern, and even a chemical pattern, energetic pattern. That it is a full embodied human being reconfiguration. So you're like a fighter pilot learning at a fraction of the cost and taking an airplane up in the sky at absolutely no risk. You get into a flight simulator in which you have a relationship with your mentor. And as you do that, you are learning how to reconfigure certain very subtle micro patterns in the way that you relate. Now you're relating on love. You work on the level of emotionality. Rather than being a slave to your addictions, fears, and limits, you're now cultivating love, compassion. You're working on the level of behavior. What does it actually look like to live as a bodhisattva? Well, you have certain speech, you have certain gesture, which are symbolic for ways of relating. You work on the level of emotions. And then a self-image, right? Every single person right now thinks that they're an inadequate, insecure creature in peril. And then you put your lipstick on in the morning and your nice shirt, and then you try to pretend to the world that that's who you really are. But really, you're convinced. When you do the flight simulator of love meditation, you are rehearsing and trying on for size a different supplanting of your conviction of who you think you are, and opening the possibility of trying on for size being somebody else. And then there's the energetic component, which is the last final frontiers of Tantra, is when they go, oh yeah, that's all really nice as an imaginary game, but then I've really got to get on with my life. I live in this body and I'm kind of like, limited. You go ahead, you Buddhist, and you just keep smoking your pot and having your visualization there. I live in reality. I got to get my pants on and get to work on the subway, in which I'm like overrun by 10,000 people who are not interested in what I have to visualize on. They're not interested in my compassion. They're interested in stepping on me. Well, the last frontier of the Tantras is when you actually harness the incredible chemistry in our, basically our brainstem. But if you look at the chakra system, it can be imagined in many other ways. But we're made of chemistry. We have endorphins and dopamine and serotonin and vasopressin. We have all these chemicals that control mood at a deeper substrate. What if you could harness that? What if you could volitionally tap the Pfizer factory of your own chemistry and live in an altered state of bliss. Not for bliss' sake alone, eating your Twinkie in the corner, but what if bliss was the best energy to be creative in the matrix? What if bliss was enhancing your ability to work longer hours for your culture or your society that has been banished in 1959 by the government? What if that's how you could keep the momentum and conviction of your mission, is because you found what's called the Elixir of Immortality in your brainstem, and you could rewire yourself from the most subtle way up. That's the last frontier of the Tantras. So all that being said, this is one of the reasons that it is incredibly potent and quick, is that it is a full body, full human being re-education or reconfiguration. Another component is that it simultaneously trains you like a workout regime. When you go to the gym and you want nice abs and endurance, what do you have to do? You have to pick and choose your equipment, right? So that 500-year period of the Mahayana tradition, Bodhisattvas would go on the treadmill and get endurance. Then they would cross-train and do another technique that would build their compassion. And then they would sit down and analyze scripture that would build their wisdom. And all of that took a long time, 30 minutes, 30 minutes, 30 minutes. What if you had one practice that you could do them all? That's what a Tantra does. You are simultaneously building the storage of compassion and wisdom. That's called multitasking. And as Americans, I think we like multitasking. We want to sign up for that. Where's that course? I want that. Oh, no. Be patient. It's not everything that it's cracked up to be, because it can also bite. The Tantras can bite. So let's just go back, and I'm going to use my notes so I don't get carried away, and I have no time to talk about this. But I'll suffice to say that it's quick. Another characteristic of Tantra is that it assumes the goal. What does that mean? Most of us go, well, I'd like to get there. And so I'm going to go step by step and arrive at that, whatever that is. I want to I want to have Brad Pitt's body. I want to be the CEO of my company. Whatever it is. It's a distant, far off idea, and you systematically engage yourself in such a way that you can finally arrive there. Not a bad plan. What the Tantras do, and they say, is no. Visualize yourself at the goal. Think about getting the gold medal before you enter the water. Isn't it true that some of our top athletes, some of our most industrious business executives see the goal, see themselves, visualize themselves in order to prime the mind and to get the nervous system acquainted with the possibility, rather than kind of inching their way there, they actually taste what it's like to be there. In your visualization, you practice as if you are the Buddha. It's not enough to be a CEO. You want to practice being fully enlightened and seeing the world from an enlightened point of view, and learning how to mentor other beings and inspire them so that you can get a massive movement of awakening happening on the planet, where every discipline or industry is turned into awakening-producing mechanism, which in a way, without idealizing Tibet too much, is a really interesting laboratory of several centuries where everything was designed as an opportunity for living beings to awaken. School, mercantile class, everything is set up with this intention in mind to cultivate a community, a larger culture, for the purpose of evolving consciously to its optimal potential, whether you call that God or Buddha, whatever word you want to use it. That's the inspiration of the laboratory of Tibet. And from that place, these are the sophisticated technology and the unbelievable science that underpin them. in 1959, they started becoming available. So you have your quick path, you have your assume the goal, and the other characteristic is this thing called role modeling, which is said to be the heart of the Tantras. So you remember in your visualization, I asked you to see a figure of someone you admire. And as I teach this more and more, I find that Western culture is particularly hindered when it comes to identifying an archetype or someone who they admire. I'm not going to ask you, but I have had the experience where many people have a hard time identifying one person they admire. And isn't that sad? Because we're so jaded and wounded by people in authority positions that the mere mention of mentor, which is a translation for guru, and half the crowd ends up leaving the place. Oh, guru. I call it guru phobia. And actually, guru phobia has a rightful place, because if you look at the Age of Reason and the Age of Enlightenment in Europe, where a split between religion and science was emerging, part of that pushback was that people were sick and tired of the religious indoctrination and utter control of the establishment. That we threw out religion and said, no, let's go the way of science. We don't want our, pedophilia priests anymore. Right? And we're suspicious of authority. And there's good reason for that. So when it comes time to this characteristic of Tantra, which is essential, is the heart, it is the engine of the Enlightenment express train, is the role modeling, you need to have someone who inspires you, who serves as that figure to accelerate your development. And I'll get into the psychology of that in a minute, but right now I'm just framing our discussion, or my diatribe, if you will. So you have these characteristics of Tantra. The first one is what? It's quick. Second one is what? Oh, ho, 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 ho. No, those were part of the quick. The second one was that you assume the goal. So you bring the goal and you live the goal now. You are Michael Phelps imagining victory now. And then your brain goes. And the final one is role modeling. Okay, the role modeling means that you have to take a figure who represents the kind of person you want to grow into, and you work strategically and systematically with them in a process of internalization, which I'm going to get to. That process of internalization is considered the engine of the quick path of Tantra. So that's why I started with this whole guru phobia thing, because for those people that like the idea of the express train, but then can't even identify one single person that they would be receptive to, you could see where the conflict of interest is. And I think, it's a sad thing that we throw the baby out with the bathwater, because I know all too well about guru scandals, even in New York City, because I see the recipient of those guru scandals in my practice. And I have been involved in cult-like communities, so I'm well aware of how, deleterious it is. But that doesn't mean that a technology doesn't have value. It just means screen better. Do your diligence. Empower yourself. They say that you shouldn't pick a guru for 7 years. You should vet them, seriously vet them. And then you'll notice that your mentor, when you visualize them, you don't actually visualize them as your mentor. You visualize them in what Bob Thurman calls a Superman suit. So if you go up to the 3rd or 4th floor, I'm not sure, you'll see tons of Taras and you'll see tons of deities. Don't be alarmed. Don't be alarmed of the deities. The deities are magnets for qualities inside of you. Incredible technology. So you'll take your mentor, a real person that you're working with whom you admire, and you will put them in the Superman suit of the deity. And what that does is it filters out all the idiosyncrasies that would taint your mind and make it less likely that you could download their goodness. Oh, I love Sharon, but I worry about this part. Oh, Bob Thurman's, he's my hero, but he's a little down. You put Bob Thurman or Sharon Salzberg in a white Tara outfit, and they're looking smashing, and you can download the goodies, and the deity serves as a way to trick your mind to remember, well, this is Bob and Sharon at their best. And don't worry about those little things. And of course, every time I talk about this, people go, well, that's dangerous. You don't want to idealize. You totally want to idealize. You don't want to idealize unconsciously, which is what childhood was about. You want to idealize consciously, purposefully, and download them goodies. Let's move on. We're running out of time, and I have to get to some science here because there's a few people that are so suspicious because of our scientific reductionism. The virtues of scientific reductionism, which is why the planet is so destroyed, right? That's why we treat each other so poorly, because we don't even think that there's anything after we die. What the hell's the responsibility about when we think we're nothing? Really, that's what the birth child of scientific reductionism is. Nothing matters, essentially. Pollute the waters, plunder the resources, bomb each other, because what the hell, nothing matters. There's no consciousness. I went to 25 years of school, and none of my medical or psychological training even had a definition for mind. And suddenly this is the pinnacle of science. Not even don't even believe in consciousness. Anyway, that's another night. In fact, I probably won't be invited back for that night, so check my website. Check my website. I'll be working out of a different venue for that talk. Anyway, here's one of the basic neuroscientific premises that actually would serve as a rationale for those of you that are suspicious about a technology like this. We think, visualizing and idealizing and mentors and elixir rainbow lights, and what's all this mumbo-jumbo about? How could that be helpful? That's la-la land. I left that a long time ago in the 60s when I stopped dropping acid. The idea of the potency of a visualization is based on the premise that you're already visualizing. You know that nightmare life that you find so real? That's a visualization. I'm not a neuroscientist, but my mentor is, and he worked with Rodolfo Linus at NYU, and what they discovered was that there's a little part of our brain that serves as a kind of window input that takes in data from the environment at the rate of 40th of a second. It opens its little shutter, like an aperture, and a little data comes in. But then what happens is that data is fused with mood, memory, emotionality, and association. Do you follow? So that little bit of external data is fused with a narrative, and then it is experienced as if it's out there. My mood, my association. That's why if you're in a good mood, you'll see one thing, and if you're in a pissy mood, lousy New York-style pissy mood, you'll see a complete other thing. And based on the idea of neuroscience of association, everything that we've ever experienced has been pre-cataloged in our mind and is retrievable. Actually, because of evolution, we're mostly working on past association. So if I meet you and you're a completely stranger to me, but you have like a little look to you, I'm thinking you're my dad and I want to get the hell out of the way. Or I think you're like that boss that fired me 3 years ago and I want nothing to do with you. I'm shaking your hand going, how can I kill you? I haven't even met you. So we are visualizing all the time, except we don't know it, and because of what's called the negativity bias, if you're familiar with Rick Hanson's research, the negativity bias is an evolutionary function, an adaptive evolutionary function of our brain that selects filters out and pre-selects holding on to experiences that are negative, because if we can remember them, the chances are less likely that we will repeat them. But what it does is it skews perception to focus on all the things that went wrong to the detriment and the exclusion of all the things that went right. So out of 100 people, I give this example all the time, if one of you gets up halfway through my talk, what do you think happens in my mind? How does my mind read that person getting up? I instantly, because of my own childhood insecurities and trauma, go, Miles did it again, he sucks. I can never get it right, you know? I'm lousy at this. I don't know what I'm talking about, and he knew it. And then I can talk to a bunch of you, shake a few hands, have a couple people come up to me or email me and say, that was really great, that was really interesting, I learned a lot, what about this, what about that? And when I lay my head down on my pillow that night, what's the one thing I'm thinking of? I'm thinking about the one that got away, yo. That's the negativity bias. So if we can assume that we're filtering and distorting and coloring reality, doing that unconsciously and biasing it towards all the terrible things that have ever happened to us, that is a visualization already. We're already visualizing. If you're one of these people, I couldn't see the Buddha and this rainbow stuff and that tree. I couldn't see it. I couldn't see a thing. This isn't for me. I'm money back. And then you go outside, and like the cab, there's somebody who hails the cab, and you're like, how did they get that? Didn't they see me here hailing a cab? Me. It's so unfair. Are you telling me that that's reality? That somehow that's the accurate reality out there? That person that jumps the cab line or could you imagine that or see that in 100 different other ways than how could they do this? Life is so unfair. Sure you could. But that happens to be your nightmare, unconscious repetition, compulsion of the worst case scenario of your life. And Tantra comes in and goes, brothers, sisters, you're already visualizing. There's a vast amount of data inside of you. Eons of evolutionary kindness. It'll make me cry. A mother's touch of her child. The intuition, the chemistry. We are set up for compassion. We are porous. We empathize. We can enter into the experience of another person. We feel better when we're generous. These are all data points in our recollection, collectively and individually. They're there. These could be the data points, the mood music of uplifting, lubricated social interaction that could be fusing with data points coming in, and you could be doing it consciously, which is to say, I don't believe that that's any more real, but it's a better story to say. It's a better way of seeing the world. I have to get my teaching from my mentor all the time because I think the whole thing is going to pot. I think everybody's corrupt. I think everybody's scandalous. As you can tell, right? Deeply traumatized. I need therapy. First one. Any good therapists out there? But he keeps telling me, no, you have to work consciously to remember there's a lot of good out there. Your brain is tricking you. Like Fox News is very selective in its programming. And so is your brain. That red alert goes up and you're like, I got to get tuna fish, get water, bunker down for the long haul. Instead of like, no, wait a minute, it's malleable. And human beings are exceptional. And there are Dalai Lamas and Ammas and beautiful people out there. And inside of me, no matter what I survived in my childhood and no matter how anorexic spiritually anorexic our culture is at the moment, there's still goodness inside of us. And so what we would do is we would enter consciously into a positive idealization flight simulator with a mentor figure who is at least better and in a better place than we are, put them in a Superman suit to filter out the negativities, and engage in a virtual therapy with them in which we could download the nutrients of their positivity more as magnets to elicit and activate the data storage of positivity that are already innate potentials inside of us. Do you follow? How radical is that? How radical is that? That people in caves 5,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago are sitting there in a 3-year retreat, imagining themselves as deities and completely transforming them from the neural basis out. I got to take a glass of water. So let me get into the heart of the therapy, that how this therapy works. By the way, just a few, I got maybe 5 minutes, so I'll transition. The heart of the therapy. Hello, there she is. Beauty. This is Mother Mary's equivalent in Tibet. She's the white Tara. She's the maternal, loving, compassionate, reassuring presence of every memory in our collective unconscious that hopes and wishes to be activated inside of you. Because you feel so disempowered and don't believe it's possible, we have to first project it out and see it in somebody else, and then do this strange thing of internalizing it for us to then come full circle and realize it has been there the entire time. How do I know that? Because every one of us had a mentor figure. What do we call mentor figures in our culture in early childhood? They're called parents. We already had parents, and we wound up just as neurotic as they are. Because the brain and our nervous system are set up to internalize and mimic and master what we see. It's already set up that way. You don't even have to do this. 100 years of psychotherapy research has already, therapists know this, that there's going to be what's called a transference relationship, in which somebody comes in and they either project all their nastiness and baggage from childhood on you, or they see you as their highest, most compassionate, loving parent that they never had. But mostly they're doing it unconsciously. This is a mature technology that requires you to consciously project and then let the brain do its thing of internalizing that which is before you. And you do it in this very articulate, beautiful thing that my mentor, Joe Luizzo, has probably, in the first time in history, has done a psychoanalytic study of the 7-limb prayer, or the therapeutic element of the visualization, and shown very compellingly how each of the stages of these 7-limb prayers, which I did with you guys, okay? The first one is to admire the mentor. Open your mind to the mentor. The second one is to make an offering, make some gesture where your heart is open and there becomes an established circuitry. The third one is, within that safety and circuitry, you find some troubling element of your life, something that's holding you back, something that you keep repeating, and you offer it. You get rid of it, you let it go, you disclose it. You confess it in the archaic language. The fourth one is that you then go swing that negativity bias right. And you go, man, mentor, you're so amazing. I'm actually not so bad. And all my colleagues and Dharma brothers and sisters, we ain't so bad either. Rejoice. Feel good. Feels good to feel good. If you're in New York, it's a very limited commodity. Then you internalize them. You ask them for the blessing. It comes in a rainbow light. It touches your 3 points, body, speech, and mind. There's a whole beautiful architecture about it. But essentially what you're doing in the imagery is taking in the good qualities of your mentor. Then you ask them to remain with you always, and they collapse or dissolve into a drop, and you internalize the entire field, the jewel tree or the single figure archetype. And what that does is it displaces centuries of evolutionary abandonment. Because we are impermanent creatures, we have always, in our ancestry and in evolution, we have always lost that which we seek to keep us buoyant and support. Our family members die, people die, and so we have a hereditary of tremendous abandonment at a very deep psychic level. And the power of dissolving the jewel tree and the mentor being inside of you is a replacement for that sense that they will disappear or abandon you, and they're actually inside. And this is a very phenomenal thing that I'm beginning to do with some of my clients who have lost parents at a very early age and been deeply traumatized and are part of a Western materialistic culture in which they're gone, sorry. Whereas in the East, it's quite typical that you do ancestor worship and you maintain a connection with your ancestors. You imagine them. You imagine Obi-Wan coming to you in the form of your dad or your mom speaking to you. Oh, you did so good on your art project, or I'm so glad about your graduation, or you did the gold medal. And you're having an active relationship with your mentor, and therefore they don't drop into the abyss. We never drop into the abyss with each other. We're always part of the quantum field. That's the oneness principle. There's no outside of oneness. This is all there is. People are in you. If I ask you to conjure up a memory of someone who's passed, bang, if you want, it's right there. Have a real relationship with them. Then everybody goes, oh, take his license away. Take his license away. Bring him to the board. He's senseless, reckless. No way. No way. You can have relationships with the Dalai Lama. You never met him. And what would it do in your mind? You see a happy smiling, oh, I'm just a Buddhist monk. Yeah, it feels good. That's the power of your mind. Yeah, that's an amazing power that we're not cultivating properly. So there's this intense, sophisticated psychology of a bonding relationship with sets and sequences. And each one of those things, the praise or the admiration, the offering, the confession, the taking them in, the asking them not to leave, and the dedication, rejoicing. I forgot the rejoice. There's my negativity bias. The rejoicing. Each one of these displaces some, weird, hesitation and fear and defense mechanism and, and I'm so bad. And it works systematically in the same way that a real-time relationship with a therapist might work. You're basically having virtual therapy with your idealized figure dressed up as a Superman suit. Man, if anyone walked off the street and listened to this, can you believe it? But now you're like 45 minutes into the talk and it's actually making sense, isn't it? Come on, give it to me. Got you on the take. I'm rolling you in. It actually has some rationale. Granted, in order to kind of elicit that reaction, I had to use a different paradigm lens to kind of explain it. If you walk up to the 4th floor and see the tankas, you might not get that in a little placard. You'll see where this actual physical object, this artwork was made and where it's from. But then now, are you going to be able to look at it the same way? That is a portal into the conscious wish of a human being's desire to master evolution. That's what that is. It's a conscious effort to dictate evolution. We can't go back to childhood, but we could do it better in our minds. We learned all these neurotic tendencies from an actual physical person who was limited and crushed by trauma themselves. Oh, well, nothing we can do. It's over now. I'm 40, I'm 50, I'm 60. You have a virtual therapy, filtering out all the naughty bits consciously, taking all the good bits, letting it activate all your associations that are like little pomegranate seeds waiting for the sunlight. And you do it, can you imagine every day you could do it? Think about the cost benefit rather than going to your therapist once a week, letting insurance strangle you and strong arm you. You could do it in your mind. Have therapy in your mind twice a day if you like. We probably need it in New York City 3 times a day. Tell your boss you need an extra 20 minutes at lunch, but don't tell him what you're doing.